The absolute worst. Ugh, we gotta talk about it. We gotta talk about the worst landing spots for rookies from the NFL draft. We're talking about players whose value got absolutely ripped from them. The players that will be traps in Dynasty or potential issues for our veterans in redraft, whose outlook went from promising prospect to value absolutely tanked. Mike Washington Jr. to the Las Vegas Raiders. I don't think that I have ever hated a landing spot the way that I hate this one. I feel it deep, deep within my soul, and it's going to stick for a long time. We have countless of teams that either had a legitimate need at running back or at the very least untested backfields that did in fact need more bodies to potentially be starting quality. So why did Washington have to go to a team where he factually cannot be the starter barring an injury to Ashton Jeanty for the entire duration of his contract? But this awful landing spot is awful for two reasons. One, the one we just talked about, and two, I have tried to mentally put myself at ease over the thought of new head coach Clint Kubiak implementing yet another committee. All off season, I thought surely, with a talent like Ashton Jeanty, he wouldn't do that. But with the addition of Mike Washington, it is highly concerning. We knew Vegas would be adding a running back in this draft because the depth behind Ashton Jeanty is non-existent. I would not have panicked over some day 3 running back from round 6. But with Washington, I do have legitimate concerns because his size and skill set does lean towards him being more of the short yardage goal line contributor between the pair. Now, I do caution us to not overreact because it is entirely possible that his contribution will have minimal fantasy effect on Jeanty. While his talent absolutely warrants it, there is no guarantee that Seattle's backfield split directly translate to Vegas. Washington might simply be a backup and a solid back that just ensures that Jeanty doesn't get slated with excessive usage and play upwards of 80% of snaps every single week, because that's a rather unsustainable level of usage in the long run. However, it should give us pause because Ashton Jeanty's ADP is very lofty. Jonah Coleman to the Denver Broncos, you are seeing a theme here. Coleman's landing spot is awful because it not only pigeonholes him into a less than ideal situation, but also ensures the Broncos' backfield is wildly unusable for the entire duration of 2026. At least with a combination of J.K. Dobbins and R.J. Harvey, you could argue that Harvey is worth the wait because Dobbins is very unlikely to make it through an entire season healthy. After Dobbins' 2025 injury, Harvey had 4 top 12 performances in half PPR through a fairly rough stretch of defenses. But Coleman's addition likely stops this backfield from ever belonging to R.J. Harvey. And that might seem like a very overdramatic reaction, but Harvey wasn't exactly prolific on the ground. Much of his fantasy production was driven by receptions and touchdowns with very mediocre efficiency on the ground. And that's very concerning given the fact that Dobbins' comparative success on the ground was just flat out better in terms of efficiency. And I guarantee that Sean Payton made that comparison too. And that is exactly why we heard all throughout free agency that they were interested in adding a running back. So we've got an issue now where more than likely no backfield is going to ascend to consistent RB1 production. And for Coleman, he either lives in a committee for the majority of his contract, where his role likely leans to that of J.K. Dobbins, or he fails to make a dent in the committee, and he's just another Jaleel McLaughlin. Overall, a messy backfield just became even messier for what is likely a multi-year issue. Stribling and Kaelon to the San Francisco 49ers. The 49ers reaching on multiple picks, ironically, could have the most impact from a fantasy perspective for us because this was a great landing spot in general. You've got an excellent organization and head coach, stable quarterback and system, aging wide receiver 1 in Mike Evans, unproven and off-injured Ricky Pearsall, Christian McCaffrey coming off his highest usage of his entire career, scrapes regression. So this should have been a good landing spot. We should have been very happy here. At wide receiver, I was hoping we would get a very high-profile receiver landing here that could ascend to be the wide receiver 1 of San Francisco for the future. That's what makes this such a disappointing landing spot. By all means, I don't think that Stribling will be a bust, and it's very clear that he is a well-rounded player, and there are no really big flaws here. Kyle Shanahan does often take caution with rookies, but given the receiving core is not very strong behind Pearsall and Evans, Stribling will likely immediately see the field. However, I have very little confidence that he can capitalize on the opportunity in a big way of what we needed, leaving fantasy managers with a rather uninspiring situation. Stribling absolutely fits the system. I get it. I get why they picked him. He does profile as a direct replacement for Juwan Jennings. That's great. But we wanted a franchise wide receiver one, not the second coming of Juwan Jennings. But even then, at least I can get on board with taking a shot on Stribling in Dynasty drafts just in case he does hit, right? The real issue that I have between these two picks is the Kaelon Black pick. No offense to him. At least I can say the 49ers aren't objectively awful at drafting wide receivers, but when it comes to running backs, the recent history is not good. It's questionable at best. And I can't figure out the rhyme or reason for why they draft the way they do at running back. And I don't know if they figured it out either. Black's draft capital would imply that he is the next man up behind Christian McCaffrey in a season that, again, profiles as wear and tear injury year for McCaffrey. However, it is very difficult to trust the 49ers' judgment with a wild reach here. So, again, do not love this landing spot. Kenyon Sadiq to the New York Jets. It happens, right? Every year, we know that some of our favorite prospects are going to be completely nuked by a poor draft landing spot. However, it is very rare that we have multiple top-end, promising prospects consumed by the same destitute team. Leave it to the New York Jets to earn this honor. We knew they were adding a pass catcher. Like, hey, cool, we knew it. And the fact that it was Omar Cooper Jr. at receiver, that was commonly mocked. We knew that was going to happen, right? And Cooper and Garrett Wilson are a nice logical pairing. I like it. But the Jets pulled a fast one on us, and they used 2 first-round picks to snag both Cooper and Sadiq, leaving us with this incredibly promising group of playmakers. In Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, and Kenyon Sadiq, and Omar Cooper. Cool. But the only problem is their quarterback is Geno Smith, and this is the Jets. I find it hard to believe that Geno Smith has the volume or consistency to supply enough fantasy points to this entire group. Looking at Geno Smith, you can make the argument, and I've seen y'all make the comments making the argument, you can make the argument that Smith's issues were really driven by a terrible offensive line and a lack of receiving weapons outside of Brock Bowers, who played injured and missed a lot of time, and then a portion of Jacoby Myers, right? However, 2025 was not the first year that we saw concerning numbers from Geno Smith. In his 2022 comeback campaign, that might just kind of be an outlier there. The Jets' offensive line is still a concern, so nothing is really changing. I mean, it's not as bad as it was in Vegas, but it's still not good. Perhaps 2027, after a successful season of tanking, the Jets will finally snag a franchise quarterback that they won't traumatize, and they can turn the entire organization around. Maybe it can happen. However, for fantasy purposes in 2026, we are likely looking at an extremely underwhelming volume situation for our top tight end prospect and a very promising Cooper. Denzel Boston to the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland landing spot is a tough situation because it's tough to read, because lack of clarity at the quarterback situation is a major issue, and they do have a new offensive scheme, which is probably a good thing, but it just leaves a lot of question marks. My initial reaction to the Browns drafting Casey Concepcion was rather neutral. I'm like, okay, I mean, it's not my ideal landing spot, but I can get on board with it. I mean, he'll likely be the target leader. He'll be playing underneath a little more. Judy's going to handle all of the vertical work, and so I can live with this landing spot. It's cool. Unfortunately, the Browns didn't stop at Casey Concepcion. They also added Denzel Boston. Again, very similar to the Jets, making this entire situation very murky, but it doesn't help that Harold Fannin Jr. is also there. He had over 100 targets last season, even with David Njoku on roster. Now, Concepcion remains the safer pick because I do think he can naturally ascend to being the lead wide receiver of that group, right? But can Denzel Boston push Jerry Jeudy out the way immediately, or are both receivers stuck in this boom-bust scenario where neither one of them is going to garner consistent targets and just be at the mercy of big plays? A terrible scenario with the quarterback inconsistencies that they have. And we can make the argument that Cleveland's struggles with getting the ball deep, right, in air yards was really a catch-22 situation. Their offensive line couldn't really give even the best quarterback enough time to get the ball downfield, so that's understandable, right? In Cleveland, to their credit, they had a great draft, right? Good decisions here. They used their first round pick to invest in an offensive line, so that's great, right? So perhaps, better success in blocking can yield better results with deep balls, but unfortunately, Boston is now part of a highly questionable situation. Disappointing considering the ample high-end landing spots that we had this year, like San Francisco. Can you imagine? He could have been in San Francisco. We've also got Cleveland telling us that Deshaun Watson is trending towards being the QB1. We'll see, right, in terms of how good this can be, because the last time we saw him successful was 2020. 2020 back in Houston. Yikes. And can we really believe that after everything that has happened and the Achilles injury that he's going to be able to miraculously turn things around? Justin Joly to Denver. If you follow me, I talked a ton about this draft class being wildly underwhelming at talent, but in particular, the pass catchers was where we were going to get our bread and butter. That was the one group as a whole that had promise, right? And a lot of depth at tight end. I like a lot of these guys, and Justin Joly was one of them for sure. So I was looking forward to a better landing spot. And my biggest fear was that Denver would take one of our promising talents and absolutely wreck their potential. And what did they do? They stole Justin Joly. Ever since Sean Payton went to Denver, we've been looking for this elusive, infamous Joker role. My problem is that this offense is stacked with depth, and there's no real way for this role to be a big, consistent contributor. I don't think it's an issue of him not having the right person, although you can make that argument, right? As much as it is that this offense and the personnel that they have just really can't thrive from a fantasy perspective with that role specifically. Since Sean Payton has been with the Broncos have been towards the bottom of the league in target share towards tight ends every single year. And we actually did see that increase a little bit last year with the addition of Evan Ingram, but not significantly. They're still well below average. I have a hard time believing that all of a sudden we are going to see enough targets plus usage on the ground for Justin Joly in this Joker role in a wildly crowded offense. We've talked about this before. I have very little interest in investing in these Denver assets because the only person that really benefits here is Bo Nix. We've also got a couple of tier down wide receiver landing spots that just flat out make me mad. Zachariah Branch to the Falcons. It's short and sweet. We know Kevin Stefanski, and the wide receiver 2 in his offense just doesn't work because of how heavily he leans on tight ends. In Cleveland, he pushed one of the most aggressive target shares to tight ends throughout his entire tenure with that franchise. And no, it wasn't because of talent. You can say, well, Harold Fannin Jr. No, I mean, he was doing it with guys like Austin Hooper and Harrison Bryant. I have zero faith that the wide receiver 2 will succeed in this offense, even if Branch can ascend to that. It's not physically possible. Yet another talent in a location that just can't work out, and that doesn't even touch on the massive quarterback issues. Skyler Bell to the Buffalo Bills. This is bad for a wide variety of reasons. One, I was hoping Bell would go to a place where he would actually have the opportunity to make a consistent impact, and two, Bell is not a direct replacement for Keon Coleman. He's actually the exact opposite. Now, maybe they did that because they were traumatized by Keon Coleman. Bell is not a contested catch guy. He is speedy and slim, right? Maybe they just want to go a complete different direction. But my question is that are they going a different direction and Keon Coleman is being phased out? Or are they going to try and force this to work and Coleman is still going to have a role and the outside is going to be some kind of weird split with him and Bell? Or is Bell going to cut into Khalil Shakir's time in the slot? That is another massive concern. This could be writing on the wall for Khalil Shakir. What are they going to do? There's really not enough offense, quite frankly, to support all 4 primary pass catchers if they are still including Coleman, plus the addition of the tight end as well with Dalton Kincaid. There's just a lot here. And Bell is very talented. He could have thrived in another location. I think this might be a dead-end situation unless he completely pushes Khalil Shakir out and assumes the role in the slot. Because unfortunately, again, this is just a very inconsistent offense in terms of high pass volume because they are so successful on the ground. Thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. You can find me across all social media platforms at It's Tara Time. I am also live every Wednesday on YouTube at 8 p.m. EST, so make sure that you stop by and chat. It is always a good time. You can ask me any questions that you want. You can also subscribe to my Substack if you want to support me another way. And if you are looking for new fantasy football tools in 2026, look at Player Profiler. You can use my promo code TARA for 25% off at Player Profiler.